in Toronto, and welcome everybody watching over on YouTube as well. Beautiful. So, Rachel, I am just thrilled to talk with you today. And I was just thinking, I know that, so you were one of the speakers in my very first summit way back in 2016. And I remember talking to you then, and I just think it's so cool how both of our businesses have grown so much since then. And we're still doing this fun interview thing. So that's wonderful.
It is actually. Thank you for that opportunity. Actually, back then in 2016, it was a really exciting, scary thing to do something like this. And you inviting me to do that really helped me grow. So thank you.
Oh, that's so amazing to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was scary for me too to put on one of these for the first time. And yeah, so much fun though.
Yeah.
So, well, let me introduce you to everybody, Rachel, who may not know you already. So Rachel Capurso is the creator of Aeolian Heart Astrology, a voice that speaks to free spirits and free minds. She illuminates the timeless wisdom of Hermetic philosophy with a unique blend of pop culture, history, and art. Rachel believes that astrology is magic because following the rhythm of the planets reveals life as a graceful dance. I love that. It's so beautiful. Her natal chart readings awaken the soul, reigniting one's passion, purpose, and flow. Since 2015, she's been sharing the light of the stars through her writing and teaching, and she has inspired thousands of clients and students to get back into alignment with who they were born to be. And so, Rachel, the topic of your interview today is The Future is Now, 2023 and beyond. And I can't wait to dive into this with you. So, can you begin by telling us, is this the age of Aquarius? We've been hearing so much about this. And what does that really mean?
Well, the honest answer to that is no, I cannot tell you for sure whether it's the age of Aquarius or not. And that is because there are so many different schools of thought that calculate that exact in very different ways. So the exact start date of the age of Aquarius is really up in the air. But what I can definitively say is that we are in an Aquarian era. And we are definitely transitioning into the Aquarian age. So we may have been transitioning into the Aquarian age for the last 150 years. We may be transitioning into it for another 100 years. But what we are definitely experiencing right now is a cycle of 200 years that began in 2021 that is defined by the signature of the sign of Aquarius. And the reason why that is because the planets Jupiter and Saturn, which move through the sky in their own rhythms, all the planets move in their own cycles, their own rhythms. But what astrology really likes to measure is their relationship to each other. And so what we call a synodic cycle is the relationship between two planets. And so the synodic cycle between Saturn and Jupiter is measured by the rhythm at which they actually join together. And so Jupiter and Saturn come together rhythmically every 30 years. It's a very reliable rhythm. So we have this one beat that we can follow. And for a cycle of about 200 years, Jupiter and Saturn will come together every 30 years in like elements. So prior to last year, Jupiter and Saturn were coming together in Earth signs. And so the basic premise of that is that Jupiter and Saturn are evolving the element of Earth in human consciousness, mutating the element of Earth, bringing it forward in new ways, making it very important to work with the Earth element. And of course, we associate that cycle of human history with the industrial era. It's not the only thing we associate with the industrial era, but one thing that you could definitely say about the industrial era, which started approximately at the same time that Jupiter and Saturn were coming together in Earth signs, is that we began to dig into the earth, mine for its rare minerals, to tap its resources for power, to build the world that we live in today, the only world that we know, which is skyscrapers, planes, trains, automobiles. You know, we have been blessed greatly by the progress that was made during that time. And we have also been devastated by the consequences. And so that's really important to remember, that learning to work with the earth element in this profound way has brought an equal measure of gifts and blessings, as well as devastating consequences. And so that era, which we call the industrial era, actually ended officially from an astrological perspective in 2021, when Jupiter and Saturn came together in an air sign, the sign of Aquarius. And what this signaled the beginning of is another 200-year cycle, where now Jupiter and Saturn will be rhythmically coming together, joining hands every 30 years in the element of air. And the element of air is associated with, first of all, intellect, ideas, information exchange, and it's also associated with etheric things. So air is the element that is closest to spirit, because it is that which can actually sort of become interdimensional or rise up to the next level of consciousness. And so this Aquarian era may still be a bridge into the official Aquarian age, which is measured based upon the precession of the equinoxes. It's a slightly different concept, but we are definitely in an Aquarian era. And it's very important to acknowledge that right now, the signature of Aquarius, the wisdom of Aquarius, it's heavily featured in what's going to be important in evolving human consciousness. It's extremely loud and present, and it's going to remain so, because not only did we have this really important conjunction, but we also have the upcoming transit of Pluto in Aquarius. So right now, everybody, no matter who you are, the area of your natal chart personally that contains the sign of Aquarius is being activated, up-leveled, and evolved. And of course, the collective is being asked to grapple with the wisdom and the challenges of Aquarius. So yeah, that's hopefully the answer to your question. We are in an Aquarian era.
Yes, thank you for that description of why we're calling it that, right? And how we came to be here. I think it's so interesting looking at the few years ahead that Pluto and Uranus are going to have these trines across the air signs between Aquarius and Gemini. And maybe that's something you'll talk about more, but there's just so much energy coming into the air elements really, really powerfully.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I know you're saying that 2023 is like a bridge year between eras. So can you tell us more about that? What makes 2023 a bridge?
Well, the main reason why 23 is a bridge is because that is the year when Pluto enters into Aquarius for the first time, but then also retreats and goes back into Capricorn. So just to give a little context as to how important it is when Pluto changes signs, the last time that Pluto changed signs was in 2008, when Pluto entered Capricorn. And it was immediately followed, like immediately, by the housing crisis and the financial collapse, the recession, which seems kind of like minor and easygoing compared to what we've recently been through. However, the beginning of the Pluto and Capricorn era started with that explosion, that collapse of the economic structures that so many people had really relied on, really believed in. And that was sort of I guess, a herald of what was to come. Now, Pluto transits are so long. And so the entire chapter of Pluto in Capricorn goes from 2008 to 2024. But in 23, in March of 23, Pluto is actually going to enter into Aquarius for the first time, meaning he's changing signs for the first time since 2008. And even though that transit is very short in 2023, it will give us a significant glimpse or a foreshadowing of some very new energies, some very new themes, some really new evolutionary currents that I believe will be refreshing and also very challenging in different ways. But it's going to feel, I believe, for the most part, very good, because growth is something that we all need to feel. Stagnation is one of the most painful, unquiet, and uncomfortable experiences. So to have a shift into Aquarius is going to feel like we are finally turning over a new leaf. We are finally turning a page. Now, 23 then returns to Pluto in Capricorn. So we have to finish that story. We have to tie up loose threads. We have to start creating a bridge to the next chapter, but we do not get to fully immerse ourselves in the new chapter in 2023. It is like practice. It is creating the vehicle to get to the other side. It's creating the bridge. Like I said, it's a very important transition. The other significant thing that happens in 2023 is Saturn is shifting into the sign of Pisces. And that's going to be an influence that is felt until 2026, which is very important. But the initial foray of Saturn into Pisces is going to be a part of that bridge into a new era, a new chapter of human evolution on a very large scale. Because when we look at large generational evolutionary shifts, we start with the transpersonal planets like Pluto. So that's why it's a bridge year, and a lot is going to unfold and a lot is going to change in 2023. So
Yes, for sure. So with this vibe shift that's coming in 2023, what is being asked of us? What is the imperative? What is the movement, that we will be feeling?
What's going to be asked of us? Okay. Let's begin with talking about, well, first of all, I want to begin by talking about Jupiter. So Jupiter moves more quickly than Saturn. Jupiter moves through the zodiac every 12 years. Saturn moves through the zodiac every 30 years. So we'll start by talking about the faster planet, and then we'll talk about Saturn. Jupiter is going to be moving from cardinal fire Aries into Taurus, stable, fixed earth Taurus next year. And fortunately for everybody here, what's going to be asked of us is to actually find stability in the middle of spring, to find a new sense of rootedness, to actually find some stability and security that we can rely on. And it may take several months to really start to manifest, but we are actually going to be asked to take better care of our physical bodies. Very, very important. It gets very, very grounded and practical and physical when Jupiter moves into Taurus. But this is the remedy that we need because of how out of control everything has become, economically speaking, but not just economically speaking, just the way that everybody feels so dissolved and chaotic and so divided. There is going to be a calling to, if you really do want to survive, which most people do, it's instinctual, you have to find solid ground. So we've been challenged through the eclipse cycle, North Node in Taurus, Uranus in Taurus, to really discern what it is that we value the most, what makes us feel stable, where we can find safety and security. So by next year, we're going to really be asked to embody those values. And that's going to include really basic stuff like eating food that's good for you, not poison, maybe taking safer herbs and things like that rather than toxic drugs. I'm not a doctor, I'm not trying to get out of my lane, but like just doing really practical, common sense things to physically stabilize yourself, and then have that ripple out and manifest in larger ways, which includes making more money, finding a place where you feel really, really at home or really, really grounded for a while. Being with people that you trust, basic common sense. So we're really going to be asked to wake up and have some common sense for the good of ourselves and everybody that we love. And it may change a lot of our behavior depending on what kind of people we are. Overall, I do see that next year, there is no way to solve the gigantic economic disasters that are going on right now overnight. But I do think that this trend, especially by next summer, after Jupiter's been in Taurus for a while, and the eclipses change into Aries Libra, I do believe there will be a more settled feeling, a more optimistic sense of finding stability again, bringing things back down to the ground, curbing the hyperinflation, curbing the sense of scarcity. So I feel like that will be an overall positive influence, but we do have to meet it halfway. We have to meet it halfway by being practical, grounded, stable, and having a really deep sense of value, not scattering our energies, not liking everything, wanting like quality, but less is more. And then life becomes very rich. So there's that. That's kind of the philosophical disposition that's going to be asked of us in the spring of next year. And I do think it's really positive. Also in spring, a little bit earlier in March, Saturn moves into Pisces. And as I said, Pluto moves into Aquarius. So the thing about Saturn and Pisces is that in some ways, I believe that it's going to feel a lot softer than what we've been going through since December of 2017. And the reason why I pull that date up is because December of 2017 is when Saturn entered Capricorn. Saturn rules the signs of Capricorn and Aquarius. And therefore, we've been going through a very long period of time where Saturn has been in his rulership signs, his signs of rulership. And that has extremely enhanced and sort of exaggerated the hard, cold edges of Saturn's reality checks, if you will. It's emphasized the hard, cold edges of karmic debts. It's emphasized the hard, cold edges of institutions of power, which is what Saturn rules. Institutions of power, traditions, and it's been testing the integrity of all of these things, like governments and bureaucracies, and any institution of power, actually, even smaller ones, like small schools and things like that. Saturn has been testing the integrity of all of these places, and the ensuing conditions that have unfolded have been extremely uncomfortable. There's been a tremendous amount of collapse, schisms, corruption, and a tremendous sense of isolation and exile, particularly since Saturn moved into Aquarius. So very cold, very hard, very edgy. Finally, when Saturn moves into Pisces next spring, he's going to be floating into a Jupiter ruled sign. He's going to be floating into a place that is symbolized by the ocean itself. So Pisces is a place that represents the imagination, the collective unconscious. And in some ways, I feel like there's going to be a freedom that we feel for the first time in many years, for the first time in 5.5 years, approximately. And that's not to say that Saturn in Pisces, that era, doesn't have any challenges, because it certainly does. But what I do think is that a lot of the limitations that have been imposed by Saturn being so strongly expressed in Capricorn and Aquarius, a lot of the negation, limitation, the choke chain that's been on everybody at some level, the extra gravity you've been pushing against, suddenly it's like when you get into a pool and you're so light, you could do like 100 pull-ups, like suddenly you're going to feel supported in ways that you didn't feel before. Suddenly a lot of the gravity releases. And for those who have actually been working, staying focused, pushing through all the heaviness, continuing to practice, continuing to believe in their idea, continuing to work through this very difficult time, there's going to be great rewards and a certain ease in manifesting what it is that you're really after. So I feel like there is a great theme right now, no matter where Saturn has been in your chart, of just unrealized dreams, unmanifested dreams, things really falling short of where you believed they should be, where they could be. And that is because of what Saturn's been doing. The Saturn-Pluto conjunction in 2020. Even if you don't believe in astrology, well, a lot of people are interested in astrology now because of that Saturn-Pluto conjunction in 2020 and what followed. It really piqued a lot of people's interests. They're like, maybe there really is something to the rhythm of the planets and what's happening on the collective. So when that happened in 2020, a tremendous restriction came in, a narrowing of our ability to move, everybody's. So even the highest of the high, they have tremendous restriction on their movements. Everybody is restrained. So next year, we're going to open up. There's going to be release. There's going to be relief. And yeah, we have to stay embodied. We have to stay practical. We have to continue to have common sense. That's Jupiter and Taurus. The earthiness remains a very important element. But I do see people actually finding the path opening, finding the way to make their dreams come true. Finally, having something pull through that has just been on delay for so long. And because this in the spring also coincides with the first moment of Pluto and Aquarius, again, there's going to be this lifting up, this lightness that is going to feel, I think, somewhat euphoric for a short period of time. All of these transits have their shadow. All of the years coming up have a tremendous amount of struggle. But Pluto in Aquarius is going to bring a sense of revolution. There's going to be the elation of I could see the revolution. I could see how humanity could win. I could see how we could overcome this problem that's been plaguing us. I could see how we could feed everybody, or we could clothe everybody, or I could see how I could solve this problem that's just been completely inscrutable to me for years. That's the kind of elation that Pluto and Aquarius will bring. So I do think that next spring into summer is going to be paradigm shifting in so many ways, a very spiritual time. And usually when we get a great inspiration or a great paradigm shift, it feels like it's like getting high. It is euphoric. And then you have to go do the work. And that's where things get tangled up and sticky. So we do need to prepare to stay grounded, common sense, Jupiter and Taurus, find some stability, let the euphoria arrive, let the inspiration hit you, and then be prepared to actually do the work, implement what needs to be implemented, take action, but be joyful about it, because things are going to actually happen, unlike the last 5 years. So the summation of all of this is, if you have been really discouraged for a long time, which I know a lot of us have been, in fact, I think everybody has been, don't give up now. If you have made it this far without giving up on yourself or your dreams or the people that you love, if you haven't given up now, definitely don't, because there is this great relief coming. There's this great wave of support that is coming next year. And it's going to be great rewards for people that are just putting in the practice, putting in the discipline, putting in the focus now. Because karma, which is what Saturn rules, just cause and effect, the cycle of, rewards for your acts, right? So the rewards can be great, they can be good. And Saturn does reward for hard work. Saturn does not look at hard work as how much money you made or how many followers you got or what your status is in society. Saturn looks at work as simply being willing to put in the hours, put in the practice, focus on your craft. It adds up to a tremendous revelation. It adds up to a tremendous level of mastery eventually. And so that's what Saturn in Pisces is going to be like. Like, suddenly you're going to find yourself floating. You're so good at what you do. Things are just lining up for you. And it's a time when dreams can actually crystallize into material reality. So yeah, that's the possibilities for next year, which is very exciting,
That is very exciting. And I just love what you've brought up here about this really, really specific shift in how it's going to feel, from Saturn being in his, Capricorn and Aquarius, where he's so strong, and then now moving into Pisces. And this is just a whole different feeling. Pluto in Aquarius as well, at least for a little bit in 2023. It's just a whole different feeling, for us. And I really look forward to that personally.
Yeah.
Feeling that sense of like a weight being lifted, the freedom becoming accessible that we had previous to all of this. I can remember when, Jupiter, I always pay close attention to Jupiter. Jupiter is my ruling planet. I think Jupiter is your ruling planet too, right? Yeah. And I remember when Jupiter moved into Capricorn in 2019. It was in like late 2019. And that was a really big shift that I felt. And I realized it was because Jupiter was moving into the Saturn rule sign and Saturn was there. And it's just felt challenging ever since then on so many levels. So this is wonderful news, to really think about how that feeling can shift back much more into lightness and away from that Saturn heaviness.
Even better than before, because Capricorn and Aquarius are they're dry, cold. Capricorn is like winter. Aquarius is the wilderness that exiles are thrown into. It's like the desert. And there are just countless myths, great archetypal stories that describe how you become who you're really born to be once you are cast out into the desert, once you are, tempered by the elements, once you are refined by the great challenge of being alone and without everything that you need. Something about it, well, it creates character. I mean, it's really true. And that's the wisdom of Saturn that's very easy to ignore. We all would like to write our own stories in the most boring way. Like, Rachel found it very easy to make all the money she needed, and she lived a life of pleasure and luxury. The end, that's the story that each one of us would write if we could. thank God we don't have complete and total control over the way our life unfolds, because we would die of boredom, like unbeknownst to ourselves, and we wouldn't grow at all. We need adversity to grow. And that's not to diminutize anybody's pain, because life is suffering. There is so much pain and so much suffering, so much sorrow in life. That is half of the equation, but it does have a purpose. It's not like life is on when it's full of pleasure and it's off when it's full of pain. That's not actually true. Life is on in pleasure and pain. And so what we can reflect on, especially when this time is over, is how much we have come to understand about ourselves, how much character we have discovered, how much inner strength we have found we did not know we had. And sure, a lot of us have felt very restrained in the way that we don't have necessarily all the resources we need to do everything we want to do. Many times we don't feel like our dreams are coming true, or they're not coming to fruition in the full breadth and scope which we imagine them to be. But that's because there's something deeply internal going on that needs to happen to strengthen us. And in that regard, Saturn is one of our greatest teachers, because he gives us integrity, perseverance, strength. And I think perseverance above all is probably the greatest virtue, because it leads to all the other virtues. If you want to have faith, you have to have perseverance. If you want to become good at something, you have to have perseverance. If you really want to make it in a competitive field, you have to have perseverance. So that's what we've been learning. And everybody who's listening to this, give yourself some credit for having gained a tremendous amount of perseverance. I know it may have felt like it was against your will, but that being said, it's something that can never be taken away from you now, this new strength, So yeah, Saturn is brutal.
Yes, honoring everybody listening for all that you've been through, all the ways you've grown and been strengthened. And, we are absolutely so much more resilient than we were 3 or 4 years ago, just by virtue of all that we've been through that we never could have seen coming. Yeah.
Yeah, so much wiser now, like so much more compassionate, so much wiser. So yeah, our world, we're never going back to the way things were. That's so true. But that's okay, because that never happens. You can't go backwards in evolution. Like, we're going to build new worlds, new ways, new moments upon this deepened integrity and this stronger character, which is actually wonderful. Because this age is difficult to romanticize. There's really never been an era of my life. I was born in the 80s, so there's not really been an era of my life that I can look back on as a golden age. I have nostalgia, for sure. I have warm, nostalgic feelings for times past. But when I'm being honest, my entire life, I've been living in a world that is chaotic, insane, unstable, corrupt, like there's a lot of problems. And so we don't need to memorialize the early noughties with some kind of like golden halo. We can actually be grateful that a lot of things are happening to disrupt those patterns, wake people up, and inspire some new ways of being, some new thoughts, some new spiritual understandings, some new ways of living and dying. It's very important that that the toxic, corrupt patterns that we've been steeped in and conditioned by are actually confronted. They are actually, shifted in some dramatic way. So it's not comfortable, but that's how I've tried to look at this time. I'm like, well, it really wasn't that great 10 years ago. And it really wasn't that great 20 years ago. I'm not saying that we haven't been living good lives or loving people deeply. Of course we have, but like in terms of larger systems and the way the world works, there's nothing to be nostalgic about. We have a great opportunity to do something exciting and new. And that is what Pluto in Aquarius eventually represents. Pluto moves into Aquarius in 2024 and will stay there for 20 years. That is a huge evolutionary cycle that's going to resonate with things that we've experienced in the past, but it won't be like the past. It's going to be completely new. That's the joy of being alive. In this era, we get to create that future. But when you want to do astrology, it's really helpful to look at the past, like what themes were coming up, what was significant during the last Pluto and Aquarius cycle. Well, Pluto moves so slowly that Pluto hasn't been in Aquarius since the American Revolution, like the mid 1770s all the way until the 1790s. Like that was the last Pluto and Aquarius age. And so what was that? That was also the Industrial Revolution. And we can look at that as part of the impetus for all of the inventions that started coming out, like the great scientific inventions that were coming out, some devastating ones as well. But also, most importantly, ideologically, the invention of democracy. The ideal, whether it's been perfectly enacted and implemented yet or not, is not the point. The point is that the concept of a government that is representative of the people, that's the Aquarian spirit coming fully into bloom, manifesting through more than just talk and more than just letters, actually, great sacrifice and tremendous social change. The foundation of a new country, which the United States has an Aquarius moon. So the heart of the United States actually is Aquarian in spirit. And it seems old and formal and traditional now, but the US Constitution was radical, super progressive, completely insane, like an unbelievable social experiment back in the last Pluto and Aquarius transit. It also sparked the fire of the French Revolution. And that's not to say, I'm not saying that we're going to have another revolution exactly like that. Definitely not, because wars are not fought that way anymore. But what I'm trying to say is that when Pluto's in Aquarius, it is going to spark revolutionary ideas, and revolutionary ideas spark tremendous social change naturally. And they have a lot of power. And what's nice about Pluto in Aquarius, really simply put, Pluto in Capricorn is all about the power of, well, we'll say the ideological state apparatus, the power of institutions, the power of government, bureaucracy, centralized power. And Pluto in Aquarius is going to swing the pendulum to power of the common people, everyday people. And of course, that doesn't mean that it's going to be a black and white, now everybody's free. Just because Pluto moves into Aquarius doesn't mean all of mankind is free. That's a little too utopian, but it does show that there will be a 20-year period of time where power dissolves from the tight grip of centralized control. And there's a lot of manifestations of this centralized control, just tightening and tightening and tightening more and more and more power into one single grip. That's what we call globalization. That's going to start to be forced to release and distribute autonomy, sovereignty, power, economic power back to common people. And it's very exciting because that does look like a positive trend overall. It has a lot of problems inherent in it as well, because every age has challenges and every influence has a shadow. But we are looking at decentralization, the voice of the common people, the needs of the common people. And that's what the foundation of America was originally about. So that would be like the shining example of what Pluto and Aquarius can really bring, which was, by the way, a very unlikely victory. There was no way that George Washington should have won that war. He was outnumbered. He had no supplies. His soldiers were barefoot. They were hungry. They didn't have enough meat to feed them. All he had was a lot of charisma. Like, he just had a great idea, a really great idea, an Aquarian idea, an idea whose time had come. And the power of that idea in the ether was stronger than the might of the British Empire. And that's a very inspiring story for all of us to remember, because that's something that can repeat over and over and over again. And that's something that will repeat in an unknown way. I cannot predict how it's going to repeat, but that concept is going to repeat when Pluto is in Aquarius. There will be ideas that are really good for humanity that will become so powerful, hanging in the ether, just ready to be born, ready to be plucked. And they will, against all odds, come into manifestation. They will come into being. So it's very exciting in that regard. There's also the dark side of too much technological dependence, too much technological expansion. You know, Aquarius is associated with science and invention and maybe a little overly cerebral. But one thing that I really think is going to be important when Pluto's in Aquarius is that we are also going to have to evolve to work with this technology better. And I know a lot of people assume that that means we're all just going to merge with our machines, which is a terrible idea. And maybe some people will, but I don't think that that's really the only possibility. I think the other possibility is that people will start to understand the ill effects that this lifestyle and these technologies are having on us physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And we're going to stop letting it be so poisonous and toxic, much the way that we've changed our eating habits, much the way we took lead out of paint and gasoline because it was killing people. There is like the possibility that we could stop exposing ourselves to just endless toxicity through our technology and start living a life that's maybe a little more balanced. Like, yes, we have this, but we don't need to implant it in our brain and like put it on our skin and live inside of it and let it just eat away our eyes and our brains and our, you know, we don't need to allow this mysterious relationship with technology to destroy our bodies. Like, so I think that's going to be a part of Pluto and Aquarius as well, because common people, they want to live in harmony with their tools. They don't want their tools to own them, right? So
absolutely. It is a really bad idea to merge with the machines. It's just
that's going to be one of the great battles of Pluto and Aquarius. That will be one of the things. There will be like the people that are just like, let's do it because we can.
Yeah.
Let's grow babies inside of plastic bags in labs. You know, there's going to be that sick, twisted, perverse stuff going on because people can. They're trying to push the limits. Yeah. But then there's also going to be the wisdom of common sense, the wisdom of common people, which is, no, we want to live good, healthy lives in harmony with spirit, and matter and spirit should be in harmony, number one. And we should live in harmony with these tremendous gifts that we have, these tools that make our lives easier and promote more connection, but not let that actually poison us. So it is a process, it's an evolution, but I do believe that Pluto and Aquarius will present a lot of that because it is etheric. It is very spiritual. It's not just intellectual. And one of the things that's going to have to evolve is the religious ideology of this age. Saturn in Pisces will definitely bring a confrontation with religious ideology. And everybody immediately goes like, oh, that's Christianity, that's Islam, that's Judaism, that's Hinduism. All of those are religions, but the religion of this time, the state church, the ideology that actually rules us is science with a capital S. And it is the same as the Catholic Church in the medieval era. It has been completely corrupted by politics and money. And therefore, it is not actually science, it's ideology. And we're going to have to really rip through that and tear it apart and come to different conclusions about how we are creating our reality and how we are assessing our reality. And one of the things about Saturn in Pisces, which begins next year and goes through 2026, is like, we are going to have to grapple with the fact that, you know, statistics and government funded research is not enough to base your decisions on. Like your decisions about health, your decisions about how you're going to live, your decisions about what you believe fundamentally. Statistics are not enough. They're in fact, they're crazy, and they're usually like formless.
Changed. Yeah.
Yeah, they're formless. It's actually like a form of lunacy. And there is this dissolute, dissolved, insane quality to it. Like when you really, if you just trust in it, it's fine. That's very Piscean. Just trust in what I say. Just believe me. Follow me. And it feels good because then you're like, oh, I don't have to think. I'm just going to float. But when Saturn enters Pisces, there's going to be a confrontation with that. Like, well, are you just going to believe that person because they told you that was true and they based it on numbers and they didn't even provide you with a sense of where they got those numbers? Or are you going to try to understand reality through different means? I do think that Saturn in Pisces is going to be a way of like actually asking each one of us to use your intuition and your rational mind. And obviously, any education that you have to be able to do your own research, which, you know, this is the information age. Each one of us can become highly educated on anything that we want. But using all the faculties of perception is so important. And it's not taught anymore, but there's a lot more than science and math. Science and math need intuition as well. We need our whole perceptive organism to really navigate through life in a healthy, functional way. So I do think Saturn in Pisces is going to kind of reinvigorate and maybe even reinvigorate actual science, because it's a method of questioning that is really important to follow and understand, you know, but learning it for yourself, having appreciation for its limits and having appreciation for how it hones the mind without all the blind faith, because it's such a like, I guess it's almost irreconcilable that science would become a faith, because that was the opposite of where it was supposed to lead us. And Pluto in Aquarius was the height of the Enlightenment era, which again, I have a lot of problems with the Enlightenment era, but it was a really important part of the evolution of consciousness. It was really important. It was necessary. And the main tenet of the Enlightenment was to liberate us from having blind faith and no reason, you know? So it's really, I think, ironic, I guess, that science has become blind faith. So that's going to be a huge, huge theme over the next decade, honestly, but it's really starting next year. And it's started now, but it's really starting next year. Like, just let's actually rehabilitate, revitalize, maybe even have a reformation. I think that's the best word. Like the Reformation of the church was the Protestant Reformation. There was a split, and there was this tremendous war that went on, but it was like this confrontation and purification of ideology that needed to happen because of such a long-standing amount of corruption. I believe the same thing is going to happen in science. So that's important to recognize. And science is going to be reformed, and it is being reformed right now, because it doesn't have to exclude the concept of spirit or the knowledge of spirit. It does not have to exclude that at all. I mean, it's really silly. The divide is completely unnecessary. And that's one of the influences that Aquarius and certainly Pisces will bring back into the collective consciousness. It will become more common knowledge, commonly felt everywhere at all times, the knowledge of spirit and matter being one, so that there is no more war or division between the two, no necessary divide in our minds and in our society and in our schools. You don't have to sanitize the knowledge of spirit out of everything. In fact, it's insane. It's a form of insanity. So that's what I see happening on a big scale over the next few years.
This feels so important. You know, there are so many areas of our world, like academia,
Yeah.
as we're talking about, all the sciences, you know, anthropology, geology, all these different sciences,
Yeah.
where the people who have the new front running ideas, the new Aquarian ideas coming in, are just completely cast out, right? They're just like, you know, just cast into the corner. They even lose their jobs, right? So, you know, it's so important to bring truth back into all of this, right? Not just because we believed it for the last 100 to 200 years and you are saying something different, you're done, your career is done. Like that is insanity as well.
It is.
Really allowing in the new ideas and allowing the new ideas to lead, because this is how we shift and update and evolve into the future and into what's really true. So I love that you're bringing all this up. It's really, really important.
It is so important. And it's also for people that are like, well, Indigenous people already know all of this stuff. You're absolutely right. They do. Because they hold ancient wisdom still. It has been unbroken by the Enlightenment and all of these movements that fractured the consciousness of Western man. It's like, that's not going on. They have unbroken knowledge that is whole and integrated. And the thing that's cool about Aquarius is that it taps into the ancient past as much as it envisions the future. So that notion that Aquarius is all futuristic is really myopic, because it's not futuristic. It is ancient. And the ancient wisdom is actually timeless, legitimately timeless. And when we tap into it, it births beautiful things into all futures. You know, it creates endless, infinite potential for evolution. So it gets very mystical at that level, because it really kind of, it alerts one to the fact that there is infinite intelligence. There is co-creation happening. There are other dimensions. There are higher intelligences. And so Aquarius taps into all of that. Absolutely can speak to ancestors, ancestral wisdom, and can tap into that to create healthy, nourishing worlds for us to live in, that are not fractured by these like unnecessary divisions. The first unnecessary division in our world, anyway, being that between spirit and matter itself. I mean, we come as Western subjects. We were all conditioned to be like split in half from the beginning. So it's no wonder that everybody's obsessed with self-help and healing, like, because we're actually all like split in half at some level that's not meant to be. So there is that wound that we have on top of our personal story and the society that we live in, but really at just like a fundamental, essential level, like the core marriage of spirit and matter, which is one thing, has been falsely or artificially torn. And that creates a lot of dissonance and a lot of problems, a lot of ignorance, and it's painful. But yeah, one of the things that I really do look forward to, despite the fact that, yeah, there's a lot of dystopian stuff that's going to come up. There's a lot of dystopian stuff going on in our world. But the answer to that really starts with every individual who embraces the connection between spirit and matter within themselves and their ancestors, themselves and the people around them that they want to be in community with. And Aquarius is very, very potent for creating connection between people that is based on spiritual ideals, to be honest. I mean, I think that a lot of people have been conditioned to believe that Aquarius is very political. And it can be, but it's actually spiritual in nature. It's spiritual. And the reason why is because it's the place of the exile. It's the place of madmen and prophets. It's the place of shamans, people who live on the edge and are far, far away from the noise and the busyness and the drama of the world. And on that edge, what is revealed is that there is communion with higher power. There's communion with infinite intelligence. There's a space that is liminal in between this world and what's beyond. And so Aquarius has that knowledge of other worlds, higher dimensions, support from the spirit world, support from ancestors, support from God. I mean, it depends on your paradigm, but that sense of not being actually alone can only be discovered when you're cast out and you're actually alone and you fall into the depths of despair and you're all by yourself and you're in the cold, and then suddenly something reaches out. That's the only way to discover that connection, to return to that sense of communion. So that is what is contained within the spirit of Aquarius. And that's why Aquarius is so humanitarian. That's why Aquarius is so wise about how to help people. That's why Aquarius cares about the needs of the common people, because it's legitimately touched by divine wisdom. It's legitimately channeling something from a higher dimension. And it turns out that anytime humanity taps into infinite intelligence, divine wisdom, divine grace, prays to God and hears an answer, whenever that happens, what flows through is good for humanity every time. And that's why Pluto in Aquarius is going to have a lot of grace in it. A lot of grace. It's not going to be perfect, everybody. I mean, I'm not promising utopia. That is silly. But we are going to find more connection to even the other side, like the way that we die. The reason why things went down the way they did during COVID is because of the collective fear of death, which has gotten to such a hysterical fever pitch that people just shut down completely. Psychologically, physically, the idea of being confronted with the reality of death was so paralyzing. And this is new because in other generations, death was, something that people didn't want and they feared it, but it was everywhere and all the time. And nobody was this paralyzed by a reality. Like, it was not possible to be this affronted and confronted by death. And the reason why we're so afraid of death is because not only has it been repressed and sanitized by the way we live, medical science, rubbing alcohol, funeral homes, all of that, but it's also because people don't believe that there's anything beyond this life. People have been conditioned to really fear that there's no spirit, that there's no life beyond this body. And when you really don't know, or you don't feel, or you don't even wonder about that, the idea of losing your life in this body is an absolutely unbelievable tragedy. And it's an irredeemable darkness. And that's something that is changing. Even without a major world religion, it is changing, and largely due to the fact that our medical science has allowed near-death experiences to happen more and more and more and more and more, because people are being revived after dying through heart defibrillators and other amazing techniques that actually can bring somebody back from the dead. And they actually come back and they tell us all about where they were and what was going on. And it's happening more and more and more. And the stories are proliferating, and it's changing the consciousness of what actually happens after you die, which completely changes how you live, like 100%. Not only that, but plant medicines and other things that are opening people up to different dimensions and revealing to them en masse that you're not just the confines of your physical body. Again, this is common knowledge and common sense in every other century, and definitely in many cultures that are alive and thriving today on this planet. But in the Western technocratic mind, this knowledge has been lost and it's being regained. And that's very, very important to the Pluto and Aquarius energy as well, because we can't really have a revolution in how we live if we're that afraid of dying. Like, if we think this is all we have and we have to tightly grip it because it's all we have. And that's really important. It doesn't mean you love your life any less or that you live any less brilliantly. In fact, you live more because you're more present. You're not afraid of death. You're not resisting life out of a fear of death.
Yeah.
So we got to get over that, and we will. And that's one of the major things that the last few years has confronted everybody with. Like, don't live your life in fear of death. Don't resist your life out of fear of death. Instead, live, and don't be afraid. There's a lot more going on than just this body.
Yes. 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 Wow. Thank you so much for all of this, Rachel. This has been so profound. Thank you. Thank you. There are so many really beautiful comments for you in the chat whenever you get a chance to, not that you have to look right now, but so many beautiful comments. People are really moved by what you're sharing, and I am as well. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah. And I want to see if anybody has comments, or sorry, I meant to say questions. So if anybody has a question for Rachel that you would like to ask, please put it in the chat. And Rachel, while they're doing that, I would love to ask you, where can people find you online? Do you have anything exciting and new coming up that you want the world to know about? After that, we'll share your free gift too.
Okay, so my website is aeolianheart.com. That's AEOLIAN heart, HEART.com. And you can sign up for my newsletter, which is the best way to be in touch with me, because I always send out very loving, beautiful forecasts for the different zodiacal seasons. And you'll also find out on my list about any webinars I may be doing, which I do a ton. So there's always something going on. I also teach classes on astrology and alchemy. So if you sign up for my newsletter, you can stay in the loop about when I'm teaching certain classes. Anything exciting coming up right now, I'm actually going to be teaching my alchemy class, Spiritualized, the art and soul of creative alchemy, very soon. I don't have the exact date at this moment, but definitely it's going to be opening for registration again soon. And this is a class that is designed for artists and creative people who want to learn the ancient language of alchemy, which is one of the most potent, primal, symbolic threads that we have from the ancient world. Alchemy is one of the Hermetic arts and sciences, sister to astrology, and it does actually study the planets from a different perspective. Alchemy is actually the original psychology, and it has a beautiful structure. And the alchemical process is a journey into inner space that gives you the opportunity to actually take your pain, your heaviness, your darkness, and use it as raw material for your creative endeavors, your revelation, your momentum. It's actually the very process that everything in nature runs on, like everything in creation transforms death into new life, darkness into light. And we have that same capacity because we are nature incarnate. But to understand alchemy, it's such a beautiful, deep, and revelatory process. And one of the things that I love about it so much is that it weaves the inner world and the outer world back together. So that separation between spirit and matter that I was talking about, that split that we've been suffering from, alchemy heals it in such a profound way that I teach it now. I take great pleasure in teaching it because in my mind, we really need this knowledge. It's almost so primordial that it feels like you're remembering it rather than learning something new. It's not getting shoved down your throat or into your head like so many subjects. Instead, it seems to like emerge from within your bones, and it guides you and teaches you like dreams guide you and teach you. It has this quality of opening you up to synchronicity. It makes life like a lucid dream. And in my opinion, artists need this kind of knowledge because there is such a science to creativity, ultimately. There is the explosion where you sort of are overtaken by the waves and the currents, and it feels so good to be moved by inspiration. But then there's the in-between, you know, where you have to keep up your discipline, keep up your practice. You have to keep going as a creative, despite the fact that there are struggles and blocks and pain and sorrow and overexcitement. So alchemy is like the study or the science of creativity itself, so that you can always contextualize where you're at in the creative process, and you can always keep yourself in motion and have great respect for every stage of the creative process as well. So it's not just like this manic frenzy that we live in today in this like hyper monetized capitalistic world where it's not art until it's a completed product that you can sell, or like your creative process is dead unless you're producing something that you can show off. Alchemy is not like that at all. It actually gives you this deep, profound respect for every stage of your creative process. So I'm going to be teaching that soon. If you want to learn more about spiritualized, sign up for my newsletter at aeolianheart.com and you'll hear all about it very soon. So
Yes, Spiritualize is an incredible, incredible program. It's so much more than a program. It's a just complete life experience. And I've attended it several times now. So thank you for for all you offer through that.
oh my God, you're welcome.
Really an incredible introduction, more than an introduction, but begins with an introduction to alchemy and takes you all the way in. So
Yeah.
highly recommend. Yes, wonderful. Let's see. I don't see questions. Let me go check over on YouTube as well. I don't want to forget anybody over there. Lots of beautiful comments and beer emojis over on YouTube. So that's exciting. I'm not sure. I think they were, oh, cheers. Someone's trying to say cheers over on YouTube.
Oh,
So fabulous.
Cheers. Cheers to you as well.
But yes, I think this is wonderful. So thank you so much, Rachel, for all that you're bringing forward. Oh, and I don't think we talked about your free gift, actually. So let's do that too. I put it in the chat, but I don't think you mentioned that as well. So definitely share with everybody about your wonderful free gift for us.
All right. So I wrote an ebook called Heartbeat that is a beautiful introduction to reading your own natal chart. So if you are excited by astrology and you want to dive in and start to learn to read your own natal chart, you can download my free ebook, Heartbeat, and start to uncover the mysteries of your own natal chart. It's actually a fully illustrated, full-length ebook. It's over 70 pages long. I put a lot of heart, blood, sweat, and tears into it because I wanted it to be good. So it's not like a throwaway ebook. It's amazing. So check out Heartbeat and learn astrology for yourself, because I really, really am invested in and inspired to teach astrology widely, because I think this language is essential and it's very important for anyone that has any kind of poetic soul. Astrology will change your life, and looking at yourself through your natal chart is profound. It's something that is deeply healing in and of itself, because once again, it's not a fractured, divided, compartmentalized look at who you are through the value judgments of corrupt society. Instead, your natal chart is a beautiful, holistic image of everything that you carry, all of your energetic potential, and how all of it works together. So we do not say this part is good and this part's ugly. This part would be okay if, no, like your natal chart is something holistic, and it reveals an essential portrait of your soul's potential. It's not the same thing as your soul, but it guides you to your soul. And I think that it is, it's really healing to learn to read your own natal chart. And of course, if you want to get your natal chart read professionally, you can hit me up for that as well. But I'm a big believer in forming a relationship with your natal chart that's deeply personal. So that's what Heartbeat is for. Feel free to sign up for that, and it'll get sent directly to your inbox now.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So for everybody here on live, I put that in the chat, so you can click on the link there and get that free gift. I highly, highly recommend it. And also, if you're watching this later as a recording, just scroll down a little bit below the video and you'll see that link right there as well. So thank you, Rachel. This has been such a pleasure speaking with you. I think we should all come back and listen to this again. There's just so much woven in and so much wisdom about the era, this bridge era of 2023 coming up next. So thank you so much for all you've shared.
Thank you, Jocelyn. I love everything that you do. And thank you so much for being such a support to me for all of these years. I really appreciate you and everything that you do. So best of luck to you as well.
Oh, thank you. Yes, likewise. We're supporting each other in so many ways. It's really wonderful.
Star sisters.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, Jocelyn. Have a beautiful day.
You too. Have a wonderful weekend.
Bye.
And everybody who's on live, thank you so much for being here live. Thank you to those who have watched this as a recording. I hope you've received so much from this conversation with Rachel. And be sure to join me again tomorrow on Sunday. We will have interviews at 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. New York time. Amazing and incredible interviews coming up tomorrow with Katerina Satori and with Dakini Kali. And we have some beautiful topics coming through tomorrow. So I hope to see you then. Much love, everybody.